Welcome, everybody, to our Hanover Messa Agile Factory panel session. My name is Neil Meldrum, and we're here to discuss digital transformation and some of the best practices and findings from our key partners that are joining us. Today, I'd like to introduce you to the panel. Vijay.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you, Microsoft, for inviting me to this esteemed panel. My name is Vijay Anand. We are responsible for digital machining globally in Sandvik Coromant. For those of you who don't know about Sandvik Coromant, we are a leader in manufacturing tools, machining solutions, and knowledge for the metalworking industry. We have a presence in more than 150 countries. And with digital machining, we are building an adjacent growth business of softwares and electronics to complement our core tools and inserts. Our solutions range all the way from pre-machining, everything from assembly, selection of tools, etc., operations planning, all the way to improving efficiency and productivity in the machining cycle with a multitude of offers.
Hello, my name is Nils Macke, and I'm also honored to be part of this panel. So I'm working for ZF Friedrichshafen AG. We are a global automotive supplier, well known for our parts and components in the passenger car and in the trucks business, but also driving off-road solutions as well as industry solutions worldwide. So I'm responsible in the IT for the applications of our shop floors worldwide, especially in the area of production and quality. And since quite some months, we have embraced the path together with Microsoft and PwC on a journey for building up our own digital manufacturing platform.
Hi there, this is Michael Bruns. I'm a partner within PwC Digital Operations Practice, and I'm responsible for our Smart Factory Transformation offering. We as PwC are a professional services firm helping our clients to solve all the challenges that comes with the digital transformation. And of course, we have a large team that is also focusing on all challenges around digital operations. Happy to be here today.
Thanks so much, Michael. One of our core charges at Microsoft is really to engage with our enterprise customers and drive a true transformational journey. And while I would argue that the cultural disruption is greater than the technology disruption, driving these multi-year journeys is quite a challenge. And one of the questions we often get asked is, how do I do this? And, Vijay, Sandvik has been identified as a World Economic Forum lighthouse. And I know you've had a multi-year journey and continue to drive this, but I'm curious to hear about some of the early stages of your journey and what types of outcomes you're driving to today.
Right, Neil. Very interesting question and pretty close to what we as an organization are kind of going through as a journey. As you would have kind of understood from the introduction that I provided, we are a very traditional company, right? We're very proud about our heritage, and we are a premium company and have a very premium position in the market when it comes to cutting tools and inserts and knowledge. Which we have been in the business for almost 80 years now. And creating a completely new business, a completely adjacent business on digital within the framework of an traditional existing business of manufacturing, I think that's the journey in itself and a very interesting journey. And we have been in this journey for quite some time now. If I were to kind of bring it together and say, hey, what's the experience that we have been going through? And it's a journey of, I would say, learning every day, experimenting with everything that we do in this business. A lot of time we do fail, and I think that's very important to say. And we unlearn what we have learned, and then doing the right thing in the right way. I think it's been a journey that we have been going through for many years now. And it's a journey that we still go on. And there's a long way for us to go in this particular journey. And there are no silver bullets. And we have realized very early in our journey that there's no magic potion that's going to help us kind of transform into creating an adjacent digital growth business within the company without going through any of these different aspects. But having said that, what I also need to kind of say is that I'm really proud about what we have actually achieved in all of these years, learned, and have been kind of trying to influence also within our ecosystems, with partners, with customers, and of course within the organization in terms of how we take it to the next step. And it goes all the way from how we conceptualize a digital product to building it, to selling it, to supporting it, the whole 9 yards in terms of how do you actually build a business on digital sustainably within an existing traditional business. Definitely one of the things I would call out is culture. We've heard this phrase quite a lot, especially when we are in this journey, that culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and everything that you can call, right? I mean, unless you have a really strong a change management program within the organization, which can drive the culture in the right direction that you want to go to, I think this is going to be a very, very difficult journey for any organization. So it's been a pretty interesting journey, I should say. And if there were a few areas that I would call in terms of how we transformed ourselves, I think the biggest one or the first one that I would want to mention is how we are changing ourselves from being just a product company. So when we talk about our traditional business, it's a product business. So it's about tools, it's about inserts, and to some extent, some services around tools and inserts. But it's a pretty much product-focused business. And here we have been a product-focused business with tools, services, processes, ways of working, everything kind of around a product way of working or a product business. And trying to create a services business within this structure and framework of a product business, all the way from tools, the kind of processes that you use, the tools that you use, even to the extent of getting on board on what an MVP is, a minimum viable product, and then learning to quickly succeed and fail and change directions. All of these are pretty, I should say, unfamiliar approaches in the ways of working and the processes that we have. So trying to get into a structure and a way of working where we can iterate, be quick to the market, collaborate with the customer, experiment. I think that's one of the big learnings, and that's the journey that we are going through. I think secondly, the aspect that we have quickly realized in this journey, and we are going through this, implementing this, is to differentiate between enterprise IT and product IT. The fact is that we need to kind of reuse and maximize on the skills and the assets that we have within the organization, which means in the digital business, we need to see how do we kind of leverage the competence that we have within the organization when it comes to IT. But at the same time, the ways of working and the processes that are followed from a product perspective and from an enterprise perspective are very, very different. So how do we set up an organization, a ways of working culture, wherein we have a different pace and a different approach on how we handle enterprise IT, everything to do with how IT is run within the organization, versus how IT supports the business teams from a perspective of supporting go-to-customer kind of products and offers. And I think that's one of the big journeys that we have been in, and good to go. Last but not the least is in terms of the collaborative approach. Traditional businesses, we've always been pretty much focused on trying to build and own ourselves, right? Moving from there into a structure where we collaborate with the ecosystem to be able to succeed in digital. And Microsoft is one great example here, creating a 360-degree relationship with partners, being successful in these partnerships. And that's a big change, and that's a journey for an organization. I could keep talking, but then, yeah, of course, Neil, these are some of the big learnings for us as we have been going through this journey.
No, thanks for those insights, Vijay. Very interesting to see these transformative business models come to life. I know, Nils, you're in the early stages of your journey, but you have an immense brownfield that you're trying to address. And I know this is a core challenge for some of our customers. And in partnership with PwC, you're doing the work together to tying back to Vijay's comment about ecosystem. I think that's an interesting element, but tell us a little bit about some of the challenges of your journey and gaining momentum and velocity to drive this forward.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. You nailed down one of the key components that we have for the problem of embracing this digitalization for plants. Because so I'm ZFIT. I'm an internal service provider. I'm partnering up with my internal customers, which are our plants for the most sake. And we try to produce a product together, which we call the digital manufacturing platform. It's an internal IoT platform of sorts with all the services that production needs in the future. Here's the problem where we come from, because a lot of people and the industry are talking about digitalization, especially on the shop floor, because there's much efficiency to be gained. And that's true. But the problem is that every plant or every halfway mature plant of the industry, especially in automotive business, in the last 20 years have invested quite some money and time into their digital products already, because we keep track of traceability data quite a long time ago. We have done a lot of automation. So we have endless systems and servers in our shop floors that have been there for 5, 10, or even more years. So you also need to imagine that whereas we are talking about digital products that are marketed to end customers and that usually have a line span for perhaps, so smartphone is 2 years, perhaps other consumer products are more like 5, a car maybe 10. So that's where it begins in the shop floor. So if you buy a machine that you get to use it for 10 years at least, and you even use machines that are 30 years old. And as the machinery has been control systems that were built to not be fiddled with, actually, so they are not updatable, they were never meant to be. You have this deep brownfield environment where you need to find solutions to connect to the new information technology world. This is kind of the critical starting point where everybody in the business says, we have so much data. Why can we take more value add from all the data that we're having? We have those hundreds and thousands of servers that we're running, but all is very proprietary, all is very specific to the plant. And now that you're embracing to come together to one platform, and that this is the journey we are starting now with Microsoft and the help of PwC, you start with trying to sort out what data you have. So the core culprit that we have is we got lots of data, but we really don't know how to interpret it in the first place. We just need to make something out of it. We need to link the entities together, build the right model that we can work with in the future. And this is kind of where you say you have, on the one hand, to protect your investments because you bought that machines and you have to depreciate them long term. You cannot just re-engineer shop floor control systems because it comes to all sort of problems, let alone to re-qualify for production in the first place. And on the other hand, you now embrace this new technologies, going to cloud platforms, connectivity all over the place, which the old stuff just isn't able to do. So and there is layers of information in between where you first have to think, okay, how am I making sense out of my data? Everybody wants to go analytics, everybody wants to go prediction. But first, we have to understand our own data. We have to understand our own processes. And then to understand what information technology as a technology, which is, I always say, the key technology for production in the 21st century. So that's where the benefits come from. But I have to understand it. Just as understand grinding to get the best effects, you have to understand information technology to adapt that to your processes. And what we are seeing right now is often we fall into the trap of just digitizing our processes. So we had done something, we like it, and we just make it digital. So that's scan a PDF and put it to a screen. That doesn't do you any good. You have to go deeper and understand how that works.
Thanks for those great insights, Nils. I think your platform-led approach is really interesting, and we find this in best practice to really drive scale. It'll be interesting to watch your journey evolve. Now, Michael, you've been integral to the journey at ZF, and I think a really interesting element to how PwC approached this was a value-based outcomes approach and looking at use cases that are truly driving business value and then applying the technology. But I would love to get your insights around how do we actually justify these journeys and drive them forward and build velocity behind them?
Sure. Thank you, Niels. Happy to comment on that. So first of all, I think it's really important to understand, and I think Niels and Vijay already mentioned it, it's not just about technology. Yes, so it's not just about implementing a solution and hope that people on the plants or in the corporate organization will use it. So it's really about driving change, or overall looking at the transformation end to end. I think that is the first and most important point, that you really have an end-to-end vision on how you want to drive this kind of transformational journeys. And we as PwC are offering here really an end-to-end solution approach. So we are helping our customers really at the beginning to identify what, as you said, are the most relevant use cases, what value will they drive, where do we have bottlenecks on the shop floor that would really add value if we will solve them. But we will also look at feasibility. We will help our clients to figure out what might be the right approach, like looking at one single plant to show real impact on this plant, or maybe spreading a little bit of different use cases across different plants and locations. So we really help from this first strategy perspective going forward. And we also, and I think that is also quite an important topic which helps us to drive this kind of transformations right now, having all these ERP transformations seeing in the back going on at all our clients gives us a big opportunity, I think, one in a decade, really also to drive a lot of changes and transformations on the shop floor and shop floor related systems as well. Yes, so here we also help our client to draft their first, let's say, new digital production backbone. Where will be which kind of responsibilities in the future? What will be done by an MES system? What will be done by an IIoT platform? Does an MES system always needs to be in place to use an IIoT platform? So also this kind of questions is something where we work jointly with our clients to identify how their future digital production backbone might look like. Once we have this in place, so on the one hand, really looking at the business value, what are the business drivers, what are the bottlenecks, what are the plans that we want to address, and on the other hand, how does a future IT production architecture look like? Then we are really aiming for identifying a lighthouse, so either really a single plan where we want to start and really show impact focusing on this plant, or maybe a couple of high valuable use cases that are spread across different plants. And here we help the client really to drive all different aspects that needs to be done during this kind of transformation. From the program management, but also what Vijay and Niels have said, we are helping them to transform from an IT organization to a product-centric IT organization. So really, how does the team should look like? How does the team should be organized to really develop and also maintain and operate this kind of platforms and solutions? We help them by also detailing the use cases, but even more important, of course, also we do a baselining before we start. So where do we stand before we start to implement this kind of digital solutions? So we can continuously benchmark where do we stand after we have implemented the first solutions, and do we really see those benefits getting realized? And I think here it's quite important that you really have those multiple competencies on board, not just the technology experts that can design and implement the architecture, but also having the operations experts that can really speak with the people on the shop floor, understand their problems and how we can address and solve them. And then we are really going down to the implementation so that we really bring the new platform in place. Sometimes we help our clients also by bringing in some kind of accelerators we have developed over the last years, either on our own or with our clients during such kind of transformational projects, really to kickstart and accelerate this kind of transformation projects. But then we are also helping them, and I think that's even as important as implementing the first lighthouse, really also ensuring that you get into a scalability mode, that you really establish onboarding teams, that you take care about how does onboarding look like, and how do you ensure that you really scale to the next, to the second, third, fifth, and 10th plant, and not just have a nice lighthouse plant that you have implemented in a pilot project.
Great insights, Michael. Thanks. And, the final question, I'd like to open up to the panel because I think each transformation is really quite unique in some sense. And I would love to hear from each of you some of the highlights and challenges that you feel were maybe a surprise to you or interesting as part of the outcome. Maybe I could direct that to you, Vijay, first.
Sure. Thank you, Niels. I think I'll kind of link back to what Niels and Mikhail were saying, right? Linking back to the platform aspect. Sandvik Coromant has been investing on a horizontal platform technology for well over about 5 years now, working very closely with Microsoft. And initially, what we started off as IIoT platform, we have very quickly, since about 3 to 4 years back, matured that into a much more horizontal digital enablement platform or a digital service platform. And we call it a service enablement platform. And the reason why we did that was that it was just not about IoT connecting to assets at the field, but it was also about a horizontal framework for mashups, a horizontal framework which could enable collaboration within the ecosystems, and a horizontal framework which could enable the quick and iterative product release cycle that we wanted to get into. So yeah, that was one of the big learnings for us and something that we matured in this journey.
Perhaps let me add to that. What the most change or cultural change is for us is we come from a history where usually we adapted software to the needs of a plant. So we had a plant that wanted to do something, IT came in, we did a lot of requirement specification, wasted time and money to tailor to the needs of the specific plant. And now with the platforms and the upcoming solutions, that's turned the other way around. So we're doing central product-based approach, like you see in the app stores of the big companies. And we need now to understand that the plant now has to adapt to the platform. So they are the end device, so to say, that goes to the platform. And that is quite hard for our shop floors that have their special production systems that I wanted to keep. So this is the main cultural problem we're trying to rock at.
Maybe a last comment from my side, because I think we as PwC are a little bit in a special position. Of course, we have our own digital transformation as well, but here we are more talking about how we supporting our clients doing their digital operations transformation. And what I have learned, seen, and loved during our last engagements, especially together with Microsoft and ZF, is how much value we can drive if we really join forces here. So it's much more really being the client also sitting with us here, doing the delivery work, thinking about the architecture, Microsoft really being on board also during the delivery phase, really joining these forces all together. That is really what makes the difference for me and what I really enjoy on a day-to-day basis on our great engagement we have.
Thanks for those tremendous insights. I'd like to thank all three of you for joining us today. I mean, it's fantastic to see the work that you're doing and the outcomes that are really part of being a lighthouse in industry. For more information, visit the Microsoft Cloud for Manufacturing website and have a great Hanover Fair. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Neil.
Bye.